All right, welcome to the Disrupt Education podcast. Allie Privet is here with me right now. Allie, how are you?
I'm great, Peter. We are in a new year
Yes.
and second year podcasting together,
Yeah.
and we have a whole array of awesome episodes coming your way. And the shift is happening with really leaning into stories and hearing more from those who are doing great work in and out of the classroom and how to kind of amplify those learning stories. So, very excited to kind of kick off this year with kind of a new energy.
Right. And who else to bring that energy than Nate Clayberg? Hi, Nate. How are
Mm,
you?
mm. Uh, a lot of pressure now. Getting into 2023, a lot of pressure, but I'm doing well. It's good to connect back with you, Peter, and good to meet Allie.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm going to give a very brief introduction. I totally want you to kind of go off a little bit further into this. But Nate, you and I have a very similar kind of area where we work in college and career navigating, working with youth and really kind of giving them their purpose beyond education. Also, you have an awesome podcast. I actually share this podcast with a lot of my students in career planning courses. It is That's a Job. Is that correct? It's called That's a Job.
Yeah, you got to get the question mark on there because
Yes,
it's
that's a
like that's a
job.
job.
There you
Yeah,
go.
yeah.
Now you just made my old English professor proud. But it's a wonder. It's just people telling their stories of their navigation and everything. But that was a very brief introduction. Can you give us kind of a deeper look into who you are and what you're doing, even beyond those two very minimalistic, I guess, introduction pieces there? Because there's
Yeah,
much more.
yeah. I guess I'll start in the now, and 2023 is really where I'm hoping to see, career navigation, college career navigation, kind of take off. It's a bit of a different term that I think we'll probably dive more into. But I'm in Northeast Iowa, Cedar Falls, Iowa, Jessup, Iowa to be exact, a small community. I've got a sophomore in high school, and I've got a sophomore at the University of Northern Iowa. So I've been able to go through this process as a parent and using these guinea pigs I have in my house or in my DNA chain to try and see how things kind of work. But, the work I primarily do right now, uh, majority of my time is spent with the Center for Advanced Professional Studies in Cedar Falls, which is the CAPS program. It's a profession-based learning program that's based out of, I guess the network's based out of Overland Park, Kansas, Blue Valley School District.
Hmm.
Started, I think, like 12 years ago. But there are, I believe, 90 some programs now in the country, three countries, 20 some states. In Cedar Falls, we got involved. It'll be actually right now, it's 6 years exact since we started with a group of 13 associates, is what we call them. And we take them outside the classroom, put them in professional environments. They work on projects and help key really develop on durable skills, problem solving, being innovative, which is what I say is being different, doing different, and then career exploration. So when I got brought into that, my background is not education. It is actually economic development is how I really identify today. I was asked to come join this education program by a school district as a contractor to help connect business and education together. And you both know that's like impossible. One doesn't really know how to talk to the other. It snows one day, one shuts down, the other one keeps going. They don't really understand why you have to stop working on a project and reset. So me coming in, I've kind of found this niche that I can be that translator, if you will, and making some of those connections. And as I got involved 6 years ago with this program, I started seeing it truly as a workforce development, economic development program, because we were exposing these high school students and even their families to opportunities and jobs and companies in our Cedar Valley, Iowa area that they had no idea were here. And now they were like, well, I didn't know this stuff was here. Maybe I want to stay in this area. So you're looking at workforce retention. But as it went along, and this is where started branching into my other work, when I would sit with a high school senior, and we're talking like April, March, and you're sitting there going, "So, what's your plan after graduation?" And they're like, "I don't know." And I'm just like, "Really? This is where we're at?" And this wasn't just a couple people. This was this was quite a few. And they'll give me some BS answer that they're going to, yeah, we're going to college and I'm going to go to the community college. And okay, did you get your FAFSA done? Did you get your applications in? Got your housing? Yeah, no. Well, did you even apply? Well, I'll get to that. And I'm like, and I'm not telling you guys anything new. This is, you guys know this. And I'm like, it's systemic. It's systemic. And I'm like, we've got to do something about this. And that's really where I started getting passionate about this work, and really finding that this has kind of become my purpose, is to help these students and their families kind of discover the pathway that they need to lead beyond graduation, but more importantly, why. And you had a post back in December, Peter, about the things you need to ask before you graduate, and I was step in line with what you had to say. And the only thing I was going to maybe tack onto that back then, I can remember, is saying, knowing why you're making those decisions.
I love the way you worded, like, you're the translator between businesses and schools, because this is a topic that actually really was something that Peter and I hit on over and over again in 2022. So I think it's actually just perfect that we're starting 2023 off with this dialogue, because so the school district that I used to teach in had a position that was like a community liaison, and they spent about 3 years building the capacity for this and bringing in more community partnerships, and we would do a day of service, and it was starting to grow. Well, this person retired, announced their retirement at the beginning of 2022 for like a June end date, and they did not renew the position. So all of that growth that started is now gone. So it's interesting that I'm certain that you've seen your work evolve over 6 years. So can you kind of talk to, like, the partnerships that you've kind of helped translate or grow within your community, and like how that is now blossoming, because that capacity takes time, and not everybody sees that, and so it's like a big issue that Peter and I have with, like, it's like this cut for something that's so needed in linking this traditional school model to outside of it.
Well, I think we've cracked that Allie is passionate about this subject. if I'm right on there, I think I'm learning that. So that's my superpower, is learning some of that stuff. But it's most of the economic development work that I did, I would go in. We call it business expansion or business recruitment and business retention and expansion, BRE work. And I would go into 100 and 150 companies a year. And there's some certain questions that we kind of ask, but to start get the dialogue going, and then asking the next questions to learn more about their businesses. And that's where you start gaining them trust, when you're hearing the challenges they're in, but you also bring them solutions. So those relationships I already had developed through my economic development work, those were the first ones I went to when I got on. And a key one is Crichton Engineer Metals. It's in Cedar Falls, Iowa. They actually do metal spinning. So like, for example, like a satellite dish, that type of shape, or air handling or light fixtures, things like that metal gets bent, and it's this old art of spinning metal. So I walked into the president, and Kevin and I have become pretty good friends in the last 10 years. And this is 6 years ago. And I said, I just got asked to do this. I have no idea what it is, but you should get involved with it, because I knew his culture was about trying to develop people, trying to find avenues of how to engage people in their company to benefit each. And he's like, okay. So, as we go along, there's a project that comes up that ends up being a step stool. Well, we're asking for projects first off. And when you say to a company, I'll rewind here, when you say to a company, we were looking for projects for high school kids to work on. And they're like, okay. They're high school kids. What do they know? Pat you on the head, and they might give you a project that we need to work on a logo, or something that probably they don't really care about, but if it got done, awesome, we'll still have it. But there's an engineer that was like, okay, I'll challenge these kids. There was a step stool for a cryogenic freezer. There's a company called Chart Industries, I think out of Georgia, and this company that had been manufacturing has been losing money on it. And the engineer said, okay. And we had a couple engineer-minded associates or students, and they said, all right, it needs to be cheaper and it needs to look prettier. Okay, that's all it was.
Mm-hmm.
So, they go outside the classroom each day for 3 class periods. So they were in this manufacturing company in the engineering room, learning SolidWorks, getting mentored by these engineers and these staff people. And they ended up designing this thing to actually not only be better looking, but be cheaper. But now the company was going to make money on it. So they weren't going to lose money anymore. I'm talking like 25 grand a year is what they were going to make. So that proved to the owner, the engineer, it's like, okay, these kids can actually do something when you let them. Yep. They can do something when you let them. And that's something that has continued along the way. When we say we want projects 8, 9, and 10 on their to-do list, if they screw it up, they screw it up. But what happens if they don't? What happens if they move the needle on it? And you just got to get them to try it once. But, Allie, it comes back to some existing relationships or the connections that you can make. They're like, you've got to get involved in this CAPS program, or you got to get involved with this school program because this is what they've done. And it does come back to those stories. You guys talked about stories. And when we tell these stories, that engages businesses. Mm-hmm. The challenge is, when you look at from a school district standpoint or stakeholder standpoint, stories are not a metric. Stories are not a grade. Stories are not a number. And it's hard for them to then think, okay, we're spending this or the time, because we've had some classes that we max at 15, but we've had some that have had 2 or 3. But it takes a commitment from the school district, the administration, and even the community to say, we're going to get behind this. We're going to try it for 2 or 3 years, see where it goes, because, Allie, it really comes back to mindset. On the instructor's end, the business's end, the administrator's end, school board, anybody who wants to get involved in this type of learning, which has the dividend or the goal of creating a better, I don't like them calling worker, but I guess a contributor to society. That's where it comes in. And whether I actually got to your question that you asked,
no, you did.
I'm hoping it's in there somewhere.
The background that you bring in terms of your economic development and this local growth and community building, and also it seems like, based on your answer, that the relationships that you had, kind of, it's a tight-knit community that everybody wins in this situation, right? It's like maybe initially starting it, I don't know how much friction there was, but this is something that I don't know if it just gets in a big city like Chicago or Minneapolis or New York, you can feel like, well, where would I even start? There's so many options, that there is power in this like local community and what you can do. Because I know I can think about like being a high school student, and I've heard this from many students. I'm sure, Peter, you've heard this, like, oh, when I leave high school, like, I'm never coming back to this town. But it's like, you almost can't, there is value in leaving, but sometimes it's like, you can't even picture like, well, what would I do here? And the smaller the town, like, then that can kind of, you might seem limited. So I like that you're helping students in your community see like, well, what does even the community have? My dad and I were just driving around our local small area, and he was like, did you know that there's this manufacturer and this company? I was like, no.
Right.
I had no idea.
Right. Yeah, we've got John Deere is a big name in our area. They manufacture the 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 series tractors here for agriculture, and we struggle to get in there. But where we have found the success and the partnerships have been in the supply chain, have been in some of those, secondary employers, if you want to call them that those are the ones that don't necessarily have the resources. But, I going back to that Crichton Engineer Metals example, one of those students that went through there, they liked him so much, they offered him an internship when he was going through his first year at community college. He was going to go on to Iowa State, and when he came back for winter break the next year, before he was getting ready to leave, they said, hey, we want you to work here full time. He was ready to quit and keep going on. They're like, no, we want you to finish your mechanical engineering degree. But if you promise to come work for us for, I think it was 2 years after he graduates, they were going to pay for the rest of his tuition. So you're looking at, I think, another 2 years of tuition, not room and board necessarily, but it was tuition. But it ended up being a signing bonus is how they did it.
Mm-hmm.
But this company never would have found this student. That student never would have found this company. They would have ended up working for a Caterpillar, a Rockwell Collins, or a John Deere, or something like that. But we're getting these kids inside a door as high school students, where many students wouldn't get in the door until they were maybe a junior or senior in college. So that makes it real, and it can have a real impact. But the biggest challenge we have in this type of learning is how different it is, and it's seen as hard. So I have this conversation with our associates. I'm like, what do they talk about when you guys go back to the main building? Because they leave campus and they're like, they ask us what we're doing. Like, they dress up professionally to go to work like they're going. They get to travel around. They work on projects. And I go, so what do they say to that? And they say, the other students say, well, that sounds hard. And what it comes back to is it's not hard. It's different.
Yep.
And different sounds hard.
I like that because I think that's one of the biggest challenges is how to scale this. So I have a couple of questions because right now, I'm in the Chicago area, so I'm not rural, but I did grow up in a rural area, and I know every manufacturer that is in the small town of Walkerton where I grew up in Indiana, and that's only because after I graduated, you start talking to people, and some of the parents and your friends work there or whatever. And now I have national companies coming to us, starting to talk and having meetings and help us understand. And I'm an educator. There's not a position like you have, which I think is absolutely needed in every secondary system there is out there. So my question number one is what was something right away that a quick lesson that taught you, I don't know how to do this, but then all of a sudden it started clicking in? And number two, how do we scale this? I mean, because these are amazing. Every one of our students has some sort of skill, something that they can bring to the table. There's a mentality there of it really is easier to check the multiple choice question. Let's be honest, it is, and it does make kids afraid. But how do we scale this? So those two questions. First one is like, what is something that you learned right away? Like, oh, okay, well, this can happen. And then how do we scale it?
Well, first thing that came to mind is, I guess I'm learning to be a quasi-educator, because I'm not a teacher. I did end up getting my CTE certification temporarily to teach a summer class that we had a grant on to try that out. Mm-hmm. And Peter, when you got into teaching, I don't know how you did it, but I would go home exhausted going, oh my God. And I only had 5 students in there, but we did it in 19 days, 4 hours a day.
Wow. So
that was accumulation of one semester is what we figured. But the thing that stood out to me that I learned in our process was I had Ethan Wakeman, who's our director for our Cedar Falls CAPS program, and we've been at it since the beginning. He got pulled out of the math classroom and said, all right, what do you think about doing CAPS? And it was basically voluntold this is what he was doing. But they had identified him as a good candidate. But he tells me, because he's helped me evolve into the education world, I've helped him evolve into the business world. But the example of like today. Okay, end of the week, Friday, we've got a test in math or whatever it is. Okay, who pays attention to that? Who's writing anything down? Who's even worried about it? Right. Next day, day 2. Okay, reminder, we got that test tomorrow in math. Everybody get ready. Okay, well, I might be a little more thinking about that, and then it's like Friday, the day shows up, half the room is ready. The other ones are like, wait a minute, you didn't tell us we had a math test, and how they get ready. So the biggest thing is we started formulating and building our system with Cedar Falls was we need to know that they knew how to do project management. They knew how they needed to take care of themselves. The durable skills was the crucial thing. So I started using this term durable skills, and maybe you've seen me share it on LinkedIn,
Mm-hmm.
but America Succeeds is a program out of Colorado that I came across through our CAPS network back in the summer of 22 at our CAPS network summer huddle, that they've created this. It's a durable skill wheel, but if you look at all of those categories and all the subsets, and you handed that to an employer and said, which of these skill sets would you want? They'd say, I want all of them in my next employee. Because that's what I would hear when I would do my existing business visits, when the company would start talking about workforce. And this all started about 10 years ago when I started hearing about this challenge, because you had boomers retiring, you had companies evolving. COVID changed it with, with the people switching jobs, the mass resignations, and quiet quitting, and whatever term you want to get into. But they were saying, I can find people, but I can't find workers. Well, today they can't find people. Mm-hmm. And I said, what do you mean by that? And they were talking about those durable skills, the communication, the learning, the planning, that they're showing up for work. Those things that I don't know exactly where we fell off. I have my theories that, if it's now 2-wage families, if it's the breaking of the family unit or whatever it is, that you're not learning some of this stuff. But that's where I started seeing kids today, whether they are at school or they're at home or they're on a soccer field or a ball field or whatever, I feel like are always, they're overscheduled. They know where they're supposed to be. They know what they're supposed to wear. They know they're how supposed to act. And that's where it happens. And they don't have to necessarily think for themselves. So that's where it came in. Remember, we have a math test tomorrow. It's like, okay, unless I write it in your notebook and stick a Post-it note to your head with a staple gun, maybe you will remember. I don't know. But that's what I learned through that.
Yeah.
How to scale, I think, was your next question. Yeah. It's hard to scale. And again, here's my theories. College has driven high school curriculum for now decades. And the biggest challenge we run up against is I can't fit that in my schedule because I've got these college classes I have to take or need to take, or it interferes with my AP schedule. I had someone the other day say they were going to take a pre-AP class. I'm like, what's a pre-AP class? I'm like, that's just a regular class, right? We're just rebranding things. Peter, maybe yours is a pre AP business class is maybe what you need to, you can bolster your enrollment in there. So I thought about changing the CAPS logo to have AP be very big and very tall so it stands out. But that's what we run up against is having that mindset of, well, this is what we're supposed to do, is what we were told to do this. So we've got to get all these college classes in. We've got to get all these rigorous classes in. And that is impeding our progress to create that better person, that better worker, whatever, because, I'm sure you both have seen it and have talked about it. The anxiety levels, the stress levels that we're seeing with these students today. And again, my theories, a lot of it comes back to the pressures that they're having in the classroom and even beyond to be at these levels to get into the right college or to get into the best college. Mm-hmm. But I come into saying, okay, well, what are you doing with that when you're done with it? Mm-hmm. And I struggle to get an answer of what that is. Yeah. We get too linear, and that's like, we'll worry about that later. We've got to get into Stanford now, then we'll worry about it later.
That's Illinois politics. We kick it down the road. That's how we do it here.
Yeah, apparently, yes.
Yeah, no, but it you said a lot of things in that that hit on things I know Peter and I have seen. A couple of them being like, kids are overbooked, and there is this mindset of always the next step, but not really ever thinking, like pausing and being like, well, what is this all for? What do I want? Like the parentals and just the world wide web of influence of them being bombarded with messaging. There's very little like downtime. You know, the kids they're very hyper stimulated. And it's not just like with tests in class and dance and, you know, music or sports or whatnot, but I mean, there's a lot to sort out there. I would find it very challenging to be a student in today's age with like getting these messages that are different from counselors, parents, teachers, friends, you know, at large world. Um, but it is interesting to think about this idea of kids saying, well, I don't have room for that in my schedule. And it's like, this is the only thing you should have room for in your schedule. I can remember pushing back on students taking an AP class over, we had it was like job, like off-site similar program, but it was much bigger. And I'd be like, if that's what you're interested in, they'd be like, oh, well, my parents think. And I'm like, yeah, but okay, these are the types of conversations that we need to be having to empower students to like lean into this like linear path. Like, what linear path? What linear path do we have? So is that when you say, you know, you're like a translator and you're trying to scale this, are those some of the things that you even face, you know, with having conversations with community members, businesses, and teachers, students? Or, you know, like what lane do you kind of, you know, I don't know, kind of need those conversations in order to change the mindsets? I would imagine you have to have some of those, or if you've seen them change over the 6 years of the work that you've done, maybe conversations you had in the beginning versus now.
Yeah, it's becoming more accepted. I think the program we have is not like any other. We run up against, you know, it's like an internship program. No. Is it an apprenticeship? No. You know, work-based learning is big in the state of Iowa, and there's metrics and all this stuff that we need to hit, and guidelines and assessments and all this stuff. We really just kept moving forward and doing what we feel like we need to do, and we always do it what's best for the student who eventually will need to be in the world, and then how are we working with those businesses. It has become here in the last 2 years, really, now that things have opened up a little more and communications come out more and we're seeing more of a gap, that I do have to paint that line in the sand a little bit more on, because companies are like, oh, I want to get in and talk to your students and tell them all about my company and pitch this and pitch that and these opportunities and this is how much money you can make, which just drives me crazy because it's not a driver. It sounds shiny, but it's not. But I'm like, okay, our gateway is, let's do a project. You really want to get involved? Give us a project, and explaining what that is. And that's when we find out if they're committed, because it's not a mass opportunity. It's like, okay, we're gonna get somebody in your company, work on something. You're gonna get to know them, and if you feel like this is something you want to explore with them further down the line, whether it's in construction trades or it's a marketing position or engineering or medical or teaching or whatever. And if it's not, okay. And the other side for the student, if they discover this is a pathway for them, great. If not, they got the project done, they got that experience, and now they've learned that this is not something they want to do. But it's hard to put in words because, again, me still 6 years into quasi education, that I can't wrap my mind around. But now government has come in so much because of pressures from companies of needing employees, and that's where apprenticeships have come in. That's where internships have come in. That's where career center type facilities have come in that I think are almost junior trade schools or tech schools that get you started. But you're asking a kid at ninth grade, do you want to go into heating and cooling and you can make $30 an hour? Heck yeah, let's sign it up. But then by the junior year, they're like, I don't know if I even like this. And then where are they at? So, you know, that's when I go back to that scaling question, there's so many different avenues and we're seeing so much different competition. I hate to call it competition because I think everybody means well. They want to do good by students and give them these experiences in the workplace and see what's going on, and job shadows, which I don't like job shadows. I prefer career conversations or career discovery meetings to actually learn more about it. But we just got to keep moving forward. I wouldn't say we've had too many times where it's one step forward, two steps back, but if we keep showing that we're doing good things, we're getting good feedback from our associates on a semi, I guess 3 times a semester on assessments that we do, or not assessments, but just surveys, and having those stories, they see it. And it does help when you've got business people on your school board in your district and they see the value of it. And if it comes up time you're looking at trying to quantify spending the investment on it, it helps to keep it going. But I do worry, and we've got some partner schools that are involved in this type of learning, and there's still a struggle on students wanting to take that chance. And you guys will love this. One of the reasons they don't want to do it is because they don't want to have to dress up every day.
Small things.
But but you got to get the value in there, but it takes time to show what it actually is. But it's like, once these students take it, they want to stay in it, because it's like, I don't want to go back to prison.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to go back in the main building. And that's the struggle with the fall semester kids that are going back. They're like, I don't want to go back.
Yeah.
They want to stay here.
You got kids who don't want to leave, and then you got kids who don't want to come back. It's very polarizing, right?
Right.
So what's interesting is, at our school district, we're a big school district, 3 high schools, around 7,000 plus kids overall. And what happened 2 years ago is when it's interesting, because I think there's a little bit of luck that happens with this, right? When the whole AMC thing happened, our personal finance classes just shot up. I mean, we had a whole bunch because everybody wanted to start to learn about that. But also, and again, I can hypothesize of why this is all happening. I do have my own thoughts on it. And I have a feeling it has to do with millennial parents getting totally crushed by economics, debt, a lot of different things, and their kids are now coming through. But our classes, our internship courses, have gone up from 2 to 5 in 2 or 3 years, right? So it's interesting that these kids are looking. They understand that, hey, I can make money. I like how it's set up. I know that was a summer program, but I would like 4 hours a day. I'm not sure what a kid does in your courses, and I want to ask you that in a minute. But our kids are building portfolios, showing these durable skills, and then you have the other half. That I shouldn't say other half, but then the other side of it is, well, these kids are just sitting in courses and they're comfortable, and unfortunately, I was a kid who could play the game in school, right? Like I got by. For some reason, I could check the box pretty well. But when I look back, man, I wish I had something like this conversation going on, saying, you know what, these are your real skills. These are things that you can attach to the academia that you're going through. So walk us through a student who's in that program, and maybe we can help other schools kind of take a look at your model and kind of boost that up a little bit and see how it works. So if I'm a kid in school and I'm in your program, Nate, what does that look like, or working with a company?
Well, I bring this up not because this is what we emulate, but it would be 4 or 5 years, pushing 5 years ago now. Ethan Weekman, I got invited by the Marine Corps to go out to San Diego to an educators workshop. And if you guys ever get a chance that they invite you to go see that, you should jump on it. Because at first I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. Mm-hmm. But they basically take you through a condensed week of boot camp. Mm-hmm. And this was one of those things. It was all expense paid. They fly us out there to San Diego. We're on the bay, wine and dine us on a Sunday night. And then Monday morning or Tuesday morning, here's these white school buses show up. Drill sergeants get off, just start screaming at us, learning how to march and turn and all this stuff. But we started getting into it, and they would stop and they would pull back the curtain and say, this is why we do this. So, they were taking the individual out of themselves to get them involved in a team. And the process that we'd started seeing was at the end in Marine training, they do this crucible, which I think is 36 hours at Camp Pendleton. And there's teamwork. They review all the stuff they went through as far as team building. And yeah, there's warfare and marching, and I'm probably not doing it justice, but it all ends at the end. They got to hike 7 miles up the mountain that's called the Reaper. And once you get up there, that's when you officially become a Marine. And Ethan and I started having these conversations going, you know what? We've been sending these kids out, these students out to go work on projects, go see businesses, and we weren't really preparing them very well. So the key thing that started was we do about 4 or 5 weeks of onboarding. So you're looking at design thinking, agile scrum training, leadership training, Myers-Briggs personality training, that they're learning to work with each other and learn more about who they are. So we have to rewire them from their first 10 or 11 years of school to now be thinking differently about how school is. And that's one of our biggest challenges. It's become a lot easier because now we're a known quantity on how this all works. But early on, they would get mad at us. I thought we were working on projects. I thought we were doing job shadows. That's what I was told. We're like, yep, just wait. But at the end, when you say, what was the best and worst thing that you went through? And they said, the worst thing was the onboarding. But now it's the best thing because I understand why we had to do it, because it made them better for what they're doing. So, we've got that early onboarding that we have to get through. And, we kind of took that model through that experience, saying we've got to get these kids ready to actually go do stuff and represent themselves in our program and who they are. But otherwise, it's, the big thing that has started in Cedar Falls last year, and this was huge for us, is we were already doing like public speaking and communication. It was already a core of what we do, but we formalized it now that they get an English credit. They get that oral communication English credit. It's also a college credit, because a lot of schools around here don't have maybe an oral comm teacher. They have to do it online. And I'm like, that's awful that you have to sit there and do oral communication online. It doesn't make any sense. So, that has really driven the authenticity of what we do, because it gave the traditional model something to engage in here, because now you can justify it. But at the end, it's like you probably could not tell a difference between a senior coming out of Cedar Falls High that went through our program compared to somebody who's a senior at a state university, on how they present themselves, how they're organized, how they communicate. But it's project work along the way. It's actually doing these career discovery meetings. We're not setting this stuff up. The teachers are not doing it. It's not, hey, I'll do it for you, which many classroom teachers do. No, you're doing it. If you don't do it, you don't get to do it. So it's kind of on you. That's kind of how the 18 weeks go, onboarding, and then we're getting to work.
Nice.
But there are times we get into about, I'll say week 10, 12, that they start dropping off, because there are some things we're getting into projects or deep into projects, and they hit this lull because it comes back again of, you didn't tell me what I had to do. What do I have to do next? And that's where you have to come back in again, because we're having them do stuff they've never been asked to do. And we still need to be Mama Bird to come in and still help them through the nest, help them feed a little bit. And then once you get over that hump, it's fun. It's I wouldn't say it's smooth sailing, but this is where it gets exciting, because it's like all of a sudden they've grown up and 3 weeks in the semester to go, and it all has clicked.
Yeah.
And then you guys know what happens 3 weeks after that. A whole new crop comes in, and we're like, oh, this is where we gotta start over. But this is where I also found, I'll go back to learning that the first fall, spring, full year I was a part of, you get excited, look what we did, all these things, and then here comes the fresh meat in, right? The poolies. And we're like, oh my God, we got to start over. And it hit me, this is why education doesn't change, because the customer always changes. So that's why curriculum becomes standardized. That's why process becomes standardized, because the people that we're serving are the ones that are changing.
Yeah.
This is a beautiful kind of start to this new series that we're kind of embarking on, and the work that you're doing. And I hope that if people want to learn more about it, they can connect with you. And if you want to share some of the places that you're at and where people can kind of find you, so that we can make sure to kind of share that out, and get this amazing work that you're doing out as much as possible.
Yeah.
So on the CAPS end of things, cfcaps.org is our website, and we're on all sorts of social media. Your CAPS network is the CAPS network as a whole. But when you look at, the work that I branched off from there, and, I think we're already, 3 hours into this interview since we've talked so much. It's the career navigation stuff, and maybe that's a whole nother episode, Peter. I don't know, but
Yep.
but it's that avenue that you've got to start. This is where we started doing that work within CAPS. That now it's like, it's funny the other day. It's like, I don't need to take CAPS. I already know what I'm doing. That's the mentality of, it's a program that helps you figure out where you need to go. In the process that I go through, this happened a few weeks ago, that I started asking the question, what questions do you have on your pathway after graduation? And I never really asked that question before. And I'm learning no one's ever asked these kids questions before, but they had the answers. And a couple key ones, it's graduation, how to pay for it, all that stuff. But some didn't know where to start. These are seniors. And another one was, how do I come up with a plan that I want, not one that somebody else wants for me?
See it a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I go back to the social and emotional challenges, the pressures, all that stuff. And I wasn't expecting that, but I can truly see it. And that's where work like CAPS, or the work I do through my Career Adventure Academy and my coaching and my speaking and trainings, it's changing a mindset, but it's moving a mountain, and you both know that.
If it was easy, everybody would do it. And hopefully we can get people to do it. Allie, any final thoughts?
I love the way I still really do love the way you worded it with being a translator, and that to work with schools that do have these pretty deep-rooted systems, because their customer is always changing, and then if you're outside of education, it's not impossible, but a translator does seem to help. And so the work that you're doing is needed. It's exceptional. I want to move there if I ever have children, so they can be part of this program. So
we get that a lot. They're like, I wish I had this when I was in school, or my kids will be doing this, whether they like it or not.
Yeah. That's the Marine camp there. You hear that?
Yes, whether you like it or not. So we didn't even touch on the podcast. I feel like I'm
yes,
the one
that's what I wanted to end on, because that is
yes.
a very powerful. Now you are scaling, because people across the world can actually hear stories of people. That's a job. Give us a little bit of a tidbit on that and how people can find that.
Yeah, it was actually my daughter's boyfriend came to me, and he knew my background in broadcasting. He goes, you should do a podcast about people who have jobs they don't know what they are. And I went, that's a good idea. It was about a year ago. And my wife is a perfusionist. So she runs the heart-lung machine for open heart surgery. There's not many around.
Wow.
And it's a declining position. There's plenty of jobs, but not enough people to fill them. But I started thinking through it, and I started listing all these people that I know, to try and reach out to. And I probably reached out to a handful that I actually knew. Other ones I got connected through other people. But yeah, there's some jobs that are on, I think I'll have in 2022, I think I had 40 episodes that I went pretty hot and heavy on. But, over the place of, a dream pollinator and some marketing people and an athletic director. And there's other ones out there that it wasn't necessarily about the jobs they have now, but really got into the pathways and how everybody's pathway isn't necessarily defined how you think it's going to be, because there's all jobs we dream of being. I wanted to be an astronaut, and then I learned that there's math and science involved, and that wasn't necessarily for me. And then I got into broadcasting and learned that I needed to actually make more money to live the life that I wanted. And then I sold copy machines. That was a job I ended up in. And then I needed a job I loved, got into college athletics for about eight or 9 years and got burned out of that, got fired from that industry. Thank God, best thing that ever happened to me. And I found this world of economic development, workforce development, employee education, business engagement. And this is the work I was wired to do. And this is my hope for everybody listening out there, that you have these pathways, whether you are 16 or 36 or 46. But it really was proven through all the podcasts. That's the pathway that I would say 90% of the people I talked to had that pathway of trying to really figure out where they're going to go. And I guess it helps people say it's fine to do that. But if you can start earlier and start researching what is out there, learning more about who you are and what kind of life you want to lead and the kind of job that fits you, man, watch out.
Totally spot on. I couldn't have said it better. That's exactly where it's at. Yeah, the earlier the better. And then even if there are more pivots, it doesn't matter, because now you're going to build faster. I love that. I love that a lot. Nate, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. The podcast is That's a Job. See, I got that question mark in there.
There you go.
We'll put the links up. Everybody take a listen. Honestly, I'm myself, I have a senior in high school. I have a freshman in high school. Totally get it. Love that we're spreading the words. And thank you so much for sharing your story today on the Disrupt Education podcast.
I appreciate it very much. NateClayberg.com and everything out there. Love to connect, love to talk, and help move the mountain.
Awesome. So for Allie and I, thank you so much. We'll catch you next time on the Disrupt Education Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of the Disrupt Education Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Are you ready to disrupt the educational arena you're a part of? For more ways to get involved in the work we do here at Disrupt Education, check us out at disrupteducation.co or find us on LinkedIn at Peter Hostrasser or Allie Privet.
Our mission here is to help facilitate and amplify changes in the educational system through local initiatives and help you scale them into community movements. Our building network of disruptors in education are working to move beyond scores and grades as the only measure for student learning. If your school district, college, campus, or organization is looking for facilitators of this work, reach out on our website or social media.
And if you have any thoughts or feedback on this week's episode or any episode, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep pushing the boundaries, taking risks, and most importantly, disrupting education.